Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding a truly monumental piece of ancient philosophy, the Da Qi Du Lun, or the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom. Imagine standing in front of a massive, intricately painted mural of a glowing Pure Land, just absolutely packed with exquisite bodhisattvas. At first glance, it's just a beautiful piece of art. But look a little closer, and you'll see it's actually a highly detailed, systematic roadmap to spiritual evolution. We're talking about a journey that takes us from the absolute most microscopic spark of a human thought all the way up to the cosmic architecture of literal utopian universes.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Enlightenment spark, then move into dreams and emptiness, tackle Pure Land vows, and finally wrap up with Gandadeva's prophecy.
All right, Section 1, Enlightenment Spark and the Power of the First Thought. We're starting at the very beginning with a fascinating, almost mathematical paradox. It was posed by a highly analytical disciple named Subhuti. He asked the Buddha a completely logical question. Is supreme awakening achieved by your very first thought of wanting to be enlightened, or by your very last thought right before you achieve it? Think about it. If your first thought is long gone by the time you reach the finish line, and the last thought obviously wasn't there at the start, how do you ever accumulate a continuous chain of good roots to actually pull this off? The thoughts literally don't touch each other. This brilliantly sets up the Buddha's answer, and he uses the metaphor of a traditional oil lamp. He asks Subhuti, is the wick burned by the first flicker of the flame or the last? Well, it's a continuum, right? The first flame alone doesn't entirely consume the wick, but without that initial spark, the final flame never exists at all. So enlightenment isn't just one isolated thought, it's an unbroken chain where your past and future minds connect to steadily burn away the wick of ignorance. The crucial takeaway here is that this mental continuum is not random. Not at all. It follows a deeply structured progression through what are called the 10 stages, or bhumis. These milestones take all that abstract metaphysics and turn it into a practical step-by-step roadmap. You start at step 1 with dry wisdom, so having the intellectual knowledge but lacking the deep meditative waters to really stabilize it. Then, over lifetimes, you progress through a deep understanding of causality, mastering the perfections, until you finally hit that ultimate Buddha ground of complete omniscience. But there's a catch. To navigate these intense stages without getting trapped by a rigid sense of achievement, a bodhisattva uses 3 specific meditative concentrations, known as samadhis. First, they practice emptiness, basically seeing that nothing has a fixed self. Second, signlessness, detaching from outward appearances. And third, wishlessness, which means abandoning ordinary worldly desires. Using these 3 tools allows them to guide sentient beings continuously without obsessing over the superficial characteristics of reality. That brings us to Section 2, Dreams and Emptiness, diving into the nature of reality itself. This whole concept builds into an intense debate between 2 top disciples, Sariputra and Subhuti. You see, the Buddha frequently teaches that all reality is ultimately like a dream. So, Sariputra naturally wonders, hey, if a bodhisattva practices these profound meditations while physically asleep and dreaming, does it generate actual real-world merit and karma? Because if everything is just an illusion anyway, do our actions in an explicitly illusory state, like a dream, actually build anything tangible? Subhuti counters this with a brilliant point about how the mind actually works. He argues that karma doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. It requires specific causes and conditions. And the root cause? It's the mind taking on signs or perceptions. Whether you're awake or asleep, your mind is just reacting to past things you've seen, heard, and felt. Because of that, a mind acting in a dream is fundamentally operating on the exact same psychological mechanics as a mind that's wide awake. Now, what's really amazing is they turn to Maitreya Bodhisattva to settle this argument, and Maitreya delivers an absolute mic drop. He completely refuses to validate the debate using dualistic terms. He basically says, look, I don't see anyone who can answer this nor a concept to even answer it with. He refuses to get boxed into a strict yes or no about reality versus illusion. Why? Because from the ultimate perspective, everything is non-dual. The Buddha then steps in to clarify Maitreya's rather radical stance. He explains that true spiritual mastery means walking this profound path completely free of the anxiety of getting a result. You don't practice just to get a stamp of approval, right? You don't obsess over whether your merit was generated while you were awake or dreaming. You just practice with profound wisdom, completely letting go of that desperate need for a guaranteed outcome. Which leads us to a vital question in Section 3, Pure Land Vows and Manifesting Compassion. Once a practitioner achieves this incredibly profound level of mental detachment, how do they actually manifest compassion back into the real world? Well, they do it by looking at the harsh realities of our current world and formulating immense vows to forge a utopian reality in the future. You can see this through these beautiful Pure Land comparisons. A bodhisattva looks at our hunger and disease and vows to create a realm of radiant health. They see the cruelty of rigid social castes and vow to manifest absolute spiritual equality. They even look at harsh, thorny terrain and vow to create flat lands covered in soft golden sand. And these vows aren't just about pretty, heavenly scenery. They represent a complete, radical overhaul of the human condition. When a bodhisattva achieves Buddhahood, their realm will feature endless light, lifespans lasting for countless eons, and the total eradication of greed, anger, and ignorance. It's quite literally an architecture of pure compassion, designed to provide the absolute perfect environment for all beings to effortlessly achieve their own awakening.
But, as you can imagine, there is a very real psychological danger here. The sheer scale of this, vowing to save infinite beings across billions of lifetimes just to create this perfect world, that can actually cause a practitioner to feel immense spiritual exhaustion. We're talking about profound burnout from the sheer weight of the task. To combat this burnout, the Buddha reminds them of the ultimate reality we touched on earlier. It's this incredibly vast, liberating perspective. The burden of saving infinite beings across infinite time is exactly as empty and therefore as weightless as the cosmos itself, because the practitioner deeply knows there is ultimately no fixed self to be saved. The work transforms from a crushing, eternal chore into a joyous, limitless play. Let's move to our final section, Part 4, Gangadeva's Prophecy, a deeply personal triumph. In this section, all of this highly abstract cosmic philosophy suddenly gets very personal. Amidst all these heavy discussions, a woman in the assembly named Gangadeva stands up. She doesn't just sit back and listen to the theory. She boldly claimed these Pure Land vows for herself, right then and there. She declares her intention to create a pure universe. And as a physical manifestation of her resolve, she scatters exquisite gold, silver, and flowers over the Buddha, dedicating all of this merit to the ultimate awakening of everyone.
And what happens next is just visually incredible. Because her mind is perfectly aligned with that profound emptiness and compassion we just talked about, her physical offering literally bends reality. The scattered flowers weave themselves together in midair and miraculously transform into a glowing, perfectly proportioned 4-pillared treasure pavilion, just hovering right above the Buddha in the sky.
The Buddha responds to this miracle not with words, but with a world-illuminating smile. Light of every imaginable color, blue, yellow, red, white, crimson, radiates from him across the entire cosmos. Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, sees this insane light show and is completely bewildered. He knows the Buddha doesn't smile like this without a massive reason, so he asks what this monumental event actually signifies.
The Buddha then delivers this sweeping, magnificent prophecy. He assures the assembly that Gangadeva's vows are totally real. She's going to traverse countless realms over infinite lifetimes, never losing sight of the path. She'll take a male form in a future realm, and eventually, in a distant cosmic age called the Star Kalpa, she will achieve ultimate enlightenment herself, becoming a Buddha known as Golden Flower. But Ananda is curious. How could she achieve such a massive result so quickly? Well, the Buddha explains that this wasn't quick at all. Gangadeva first planted this spiritual root eons ago, making an offering to an ancient Buddha named Dipamkara, right alongside our current Buddha in a past life. This brilliantly brings us full circle to that continuum we discussed at the very start of this explainer. Her journey began lifetimes ago with a single, tiny spark. That very first thought truly set the foundation that will eventually burn away all ignorance and lead to her final awakening. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, profound thought to carry into your day. We've looked at sweeping cosmic timelines, utopian worlds, and the literal mechanics of enlightenment. But if our own lives, our stresses, and our burdens are truly as weightless and vast as empty space, how does adopting that cosmic perspective change the way you view your own daily struggles right now? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and keep exploring.